Our next panel includes Dr. Jeanine D'Armiento, Dr. Marc Miravitlles, and Karen O'Hara. Dr. D'Armiento is a professor of medicine and anesthesiology at Columbia University in New York City. She is the director of the Center of Molecular Pulmonary Disease and Anesthesiology and Physiology and Cellular Biophysics. And she's also the director of the Center for LAM and Rare Diseases. Dr. D'Armiento is also the principal investigator of the Alpha-1 Foundation's Research Registry, and she is the chair of the board of directors of the Alpha-1 Foundation. Dr. Marc Miravitlles is a senior researcher and consultant at Vall d'Hebron University Hospital in Barcelona, Spain. Dr. Miravitlles is the co-principal investigator of EARCO, the European Alpha-1 Registry. Ms. Karen O'Hara is an Alpha-1 patient, and she is the chairperson of the Alpha-1 UK support group. Ms. O'Hara is also the European Lung Network Lung Patient Co-Chair. She's also a representative on the EARCO committee. The panel will now have a discussion entitled Registries and Patient-Reported Outcomes. Dr. Miravitlles, will you kick us off?
Yes, sure. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me to be with you today. I just have very few slides just to give you a very short overview about our registry. Wait a minute, I don't have it open. Here it is. Here it is. It should work now. Here it is. So in the next very few minutes, I will give you an overview of the new registry, the new first European-based registry, but now has become international registry, the EARCO initiative for the EARCO registry. These are my conflicts of interest. And the objective of this registry is a bit of the continuation of the old AIR registry that was basically funded in Europe and was very successful in collecting a large number of data from patients at baseline, but unfortunately was not so successful in collecting long-term follow-up data to understand the natural history of the disease. Understanding this need, the European Respiratory Society launched what is called the CRC, the Clinical Research Collaboration. And one of these clinical research collaborations was dedicated to Alpha-1, and it's called EARCO, European Alpha-1 Research Collaboration. In this collaboration, international collaboration with investigators with different backgrounds, the main objective was to set up an international prospective follow-up registry. And after a few years of developing the registry, it was finally launched in February 2020. Unfortunately, just a few weeks after the launch, we had the pandemic and the lockdown, and therefore recruitment was severely affected. We initially planned to recruit 3,000 patients in the first 3 years, but it will take longer due to the pandemic, and still it has not recovered completely in some countries due to the lack of face-to-face visit. And there are some testing and some complementary tests that must be conducted for the registry and can only be conducted in face-to-face visits, and therefore it has run slowlier than we expected. We wanted to gather information first from centers across Europe, but we also have centers now in Latin America to integrate data with pre-existing national registries to facilitate development of longitudinal studies, collaboration with other registries, and attract new researchers. So I don't want to go into details on the registry. It collects the usual information, that clinical information, demographic, and other information that should be collected at all visits in individuals and patients with Alpha-1. And we plan to have a follow-up visit every year. This is the current status. We have more than 550 patients registered. There are 49 sites, basically across Europe, but we also have Colombia with one open site, and we are opening sites also beyond Europe. And these are the most recruiting sites, basically from Spain, the UK, Sweden, Czech Republic, and Portugal. And the registry is not the only research project in EARCO. And in fact, in order to identify the unmet needs, we ran a survey that probably some of you or most of you are aware and participated, because we have a huge participation of patients and caregivers. And in order to identify the most important research questions that this group should address in the future. For those who are interested, we have the website. In the website, you can get more information about the ARCO in general, the initiatives, the research projects, and also there's a section for patients with all the associations and the data and the contact details of the different associations. And I don't want to take more of your time. I just wanted to give you an overview, and I will be happy to answer your questions during the discussion. I'm not sure who is next. I don't know if Jeanine is next.
Yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm just putting up my slides now. Okay, so this is just we're just briefly talking about our registry. Some of you may have heard this yesterday, but I just want to give a background. Originally, the Alpha-1 Foundation took its research registry from the NIH original research registry. When that was shut down, we set up a registry at the University of Miami and then moved that registry to the Medical University of South Carolina. These registries at the time were overseen by the universities, but a few years ago, there was a decision made that we should return the registry in the hands of the patients, which meant returning to the foundation. This was made possible by many of the software capabilities that were generated through NIH that would allow foundations to do this, some of them free and some of them partially financed by NIH. But this was an initiative to allow patients to oversee their registries, run their registries, and direct, how they were utilized. So this was an exciting opportunity for us. We hired an IT person who built a database that was based on the REDCap database software. It's as secure as the system that is used in the Pentagon. So we use the same online web service that's used in the Pentagon. So hopefully that's very secure. And we are presently building further this capability of us to pull de-identified data from the database so that in the future, potentially we can interact with databases such as Dr. Miravitlles described. All of the staff underwent good clinical practice, and the registry is followed. Although foundations don't have the same strict criteria, we have instituted strict criteria of HIPAA, and so our registry is under HIPAA guidance, and we have an IRB for it. So our registry was initially launched in 2019 with paper copies and meeting people. Patient recruitment was done at education days, filling out surveys. In 2020, we launched an electronic platform, which allowed patients to just sign up, as I showed you on the screen before. They go online to our foundation website, and then they go to this portal and easily can sign up for the registry. And that in the future, we're actually going to be uploading, we have the capability and the storage to upload both images and patient records to the database, so it can be a robust clinical database. Recruitment is done similarly through education days, virtual meetings, but we have really had strong support from AlphaNet and the AlphaNet coordinators to encourage people to sign up for our registry, and we're very grateful for that. Shown here is the slide of our recruitment for our registry and our enrollment history. And as I told you, we started out with paper and then we went to an electronic launch, and you can see how well we're doing with us over 3,000 members. We are transferring data from our, as I told you, our original registry was at MUSC. And so we are taking that data and transferring it into to synergize with our present registry held at the foundation. And so we're in process of doing that. And that is, I just wanted to give a baseline of what our registry was, and we can go on to the next speaker and then wait for questions.
Thanks very much. I'll just share my screen, hopefully quicker than yesterday. Okay, you've all got it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I just want to give an introduction into the topic of patient-reported outcomes. And I'd like to show a few slides that I actually shared yesterday during the PRO session at the research conference. So I'm going to highlight some key points from that presentation for people who weren't able to attend yesterday. So a PRO is the patient's report of the impact of a disease and treatment on health from the patient perspective, without amendment or interpretation. And contrary to common perception, a PRO is not exactly the same as a health-related quality of life measure. So a PRO can be much more extensive than just capturing a patient's health-related quality of life. And it may also include additional measures of a patient's health status. As the definition at the bottom of the slide shows, a patient-reported outcome measure is an instrument that may also capture concepts such as functionality or activity levels. So why are PROs so important, and why do we urgently need PROs that are specific for alpha-1? So regulatory authorities evaluate the risk-benefit ratio of a treatment. If that is positive and the benefits are seen to outweigh the risks, the treatment receives a license. However, outside the US, a license alone is not sufficient for patients to be able to get access to treatment. The treatment first needs to be assessed by health technology appraisal bodies, and only if they consider the added value of the new treatment to be sufficient based on their own criteria will they agree to pay for the treatment. So the issue with value is that it is in the eye of the beholder, and doctors, payers and patients, or society at large, may have very different perspectives of what constitutes value. Even payers in Europe may have a different perspective on the value of a new treatment than payers in the US. And the same is true for patients, because their perception of the added value of a new treatment depends on what their current standard of care looks like. And the standard of care may be different in different parts of the world. In the last decade, payers have therefore focused their assessment of new treatments much more on patient-relevant outcomes, such as PROs. The reason as to why augmentation therapy is not available in many countries outside of the US is because payers have not been convinced of the added value of augmentation therapy based on the data that manufacturers have provided them with. None of the pivotal trials conducted to date have shown convincing efficacy as per the payer requirements in many countries. Neither have any of the existing treatments been able to demonstrate a statistically significant improvement in any quality of life measures. To date, no specific alpha-1 patient-reported outcome measure exists, but in order to ensure broad access to new treatments, their benefit needs to be studied in clinical trials with suitable outcome measures that include PROs that need to be specific for alpha-1. The alpha-1 community in Europe therefore calls for a systematic, multi-stakeholder, concerted effort to improve the evidence base in AATD and to develop one or more fit-for-purpose, disease-specific, patient-reported outcome instrument to develop the requirements for authorization and reimbursement of novel AATD therapies, led by health economics outcomes research experts. Regulators and HTA agencies should be involved in the initiative in an advisory capacity to ensure that the tools will meet their requirements. It will, of course, be costly. To demonstrate our commitment to such an initiative, national patient groups in Europe would like to contribute a six-figure sum towards the development of one or more alpha-1 specific PRO. However, the patient community doesn't have the bandwidth and resources to do this on our own. So this initiative requires significant additional funding from industry and a truly collaborative effort as proposed on this slide. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take some questions from the chat. The first question I have is eARCO actively recruiting other countries, as some of them are not listed as participating?
You're on mute, Mark.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I would not say that we are actively recruiting other countries, but we very much welcome other countries. So we have disseminated the information in congresses, in scientific journals, at meetings with peers, and everybody is welcome. Actually, we have made contacts in countries such as Argentina, and Mariano is here in the call, Brazil, other countries in Latin America, other countries in Europe. We have established contacts also in Australia and New Zealand. So, and we have discussed the possibilities of participation from other countries. I must say that countries do not participate as such. So individual investigators are participating. The exception being a few countries that have a national registry, and they want to keep it as such, and they participate as a global partner, as one partner, the whole national registry in contact with eARCO. But it is only in the minority of cases. In the majority of cases, there are individual investigators from different countries that want to join.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So there's a question: if I'm in a registry, what determines if I am contacted to participate in a clinical trial?
Can you say it again? I didn't get it well.
Do you want to know what if you're in a registry, what determines how you're contacted for a clinical study? And I think it differs between our registry in the US. In the US, as I said, it's a foundation run registry by patients. We have a registry committee that determines whether an email or a message can go out to participants. And if deemed reasonable, we send the message directly to patients who then can participate in the trial. And Dr. Miravitlles, you can tell how yours is.
Yeah, it is very different because due to the data protection laws in Europe, we cannot collect any identifying information in the registry. So all data are anonymized. So we can only know where are the patients and what type of patients. And according to the characteristics and the inclusion and exclusion criteria of the trials, we may know that in certain country or in certain center, they may be eligible patients, and then we have to contact the physicians, and only the physicians can then contact their own patients, but we cannot contact directly the patients because all data are anonymized.
So I'm being asked directly a question: what would an alpha-1 specific PRO look like, and would it be possible to build that algorithm profile from the registries involved? So I haven't it's a bigger question to know what an alpha-1 specific PRO would look like because it hasn't been developed. I think we all would be interested in working with something that would be an alpha-1 standardized PRO. I know that at the foundation has invested significantly in the last few years in a consortium. It's called a biomarker consortium, where we're looking to see if clinical biomarkers can correlate with disease progression to do just what Karen is saying, assist in clinical trials. And so along with that consortium, likely if there was available a standard PRO, we would be very welcoming to have that included in our assessment.
Great. Thank you, Jeanine. So we have a question. How does patient-reported data enhance a clinical trial? And do regulatory bodies accept that patient-reported data?
Yeah. Well, it does. I mean, patient-reported outcomes are very important in clinical trials. Usually, they are not, at least in COPD, for example, they are not the main outcomes. They used to be secondary outcomes, but they are very relevant, and some of them are accepted by regulatory agencies. The process is hard. I mean, it takes time to develop, and it also takes time and data to convince the regulators about the usefulness of these patient-reported outcomes. But to give you an example, the St. George Respiratory Questionnaire is accepted by regulators as an outcome for clinical trials, although obviously it's not specific for alpha-1 patients.
So, and I don't think it's sensitive enough to collect the data for alpha-1 either. I think that's one of the problems that we found, that St. George's isn't sensitive enough, and the EQ5D that we use is very generic, which is the reason why we need a disease-specific PRO. It's what the payers are asking us to provide. I think we've had 3 assessments of augmentation therapy in the UK by the 3 different bodies, and all of them were asking for patient-reported quality of life data and patient-reported outcomes. So I think the development of a PRO, as we're suggesting, with everybody, I think alpha-1 has got the expertise from the clinicians to help support this with the patients, and by using externals that we've suggested on the slide that gave the model, and following the Duchenne model, I think we could really achieve something significant, which will give enormous benefit to patients that are actually residing in treatment-naive countries.
It's important to have the instrument available, because I do think that there are many trials, as it just exemplified by Dr. Brownlee's talk, that could put these instruments into their trial, even to test them as an additional measure. So all of us would be willing to do that in the trials that we're running. And as I said, in our biomarker consortium, we would welcome an instrument that was alpha specific. We are having our patient, they're going to hate us. They're filling out multiple questionnaires, but we're trying to find the right one that can assess patient-reported, that can assess the findings from the patient. So an additional instrument that was validated would be welcome for us.